Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. And today we have a former student here at Trials College, a graduate from the paralegal program a couple of years back, and then went on to passing his licensing exam and does a little bit of work with current students or future candidates there with the writing and preparing for the exam, and as well has his own practice amongst other number of other things. So thank you so much, Mohammed, for joining us here today, and looking forward to discussing all of those things with you today.
Thank you, JP. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my experiences.
Okay, so Mohammed, maybe we can start. You can tell us a little bit about what brought you into the paralegal program and some of the other things that you're involved with, and maybe give us a little bit more of a background.
Yes, definitely. So basically, I didn't have any legal background when I immigrated to Canada. I immigrated to Canada as a refugee. So within a few days of my landing into Canada, I was inside the IRB. And it is also most of the paralegal students and immigration consultants would know that it is the Immigration and Refugee Board, which deals with the refugees in Canada. So the whole system, the whole idea of being in an administrative tribunal, federal administrative tribunal, and going through that legal process really fascinated me. I had a accountancy background from back home and worked in businesses, different businesses and organizations in Dubai. So coming to Canada and then going through that legal process really fascinated me, and it inspired me in getting into this legal fraternity. And in my starting days, I worked at different places, including Walmart and other organizations. But then I researched and I found out that paralegal program is something which I can pursue. And luckily, I got the admission at Trials College. Um, and it all began, I started to gain interest in legal acumen. I started to gain experience. Started my volunteering in about a week's time when I was inside Trials. One of my professor at Trials, Adila, she asked me, to walk into different law offices and try and get some experience by volunteering some hours there, and I did so, going to Kelsey Law in Brampton. It's a personal injury law firm. So I was started volunteering maybe a week after I started my program, which helped me a lot. Actually, working in such a big law firm for like 4 hours every day, and the program itself, it's very well structured in Trials, by the way. And I got a chance to get my mentorship from you yourself. And I think I studied a couple of courses from you also in the start, and then in the big in the end. So yes, the time at Trials was very, very inspiring for me, looking at your having your own practice, then my other professor, Adila, and then Darlene. So all of these great instructors had their own practices, and they would share their real life experiences, including you. I remember you discussing about a few of the matters you worked on, and that's where it all began. After I got my graduation from Trials, then the other hurdle was the P1 exam. So I remember meeting you in our graduation ceremony, and you told me, what, if you can get through those materials at least twice, and if you know where, if you tab it correctly, and if you know where you would find the answer, then it shouldn't be a problem. And that was a very big confidence booster for me, because the nervousness is always there. Luckily, I did what my mentors told me, and I passed the exam on the first attempt. And since then, um, I do P1 prep classes myself, and I've had a very good success ratio. Most of my students are now licensed paralegals, and they have their own practices. So yeah, I'm also a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, which I pursued after my paralegal license. And again, the whole idea is to add on to my licenses so that you can that I can offer um, much more legal services and affordable legal services under one roof. So yeah, my immigration consultancy license I got in last year, and since then I've been practicing RCIC. Um, the exam for the paralegal P1 was 7 hours back then when I wrote my exam. I don't know, online it's like 4 hours. If correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 4 hours now, right? Yeah, it's 4 hours now. So I think 160 questions in 4 hours. I believe it's pretty much manageable. We had 240 questions in 7 hours, which was very, very stressful. So, and then especially in the comfort of your home when you're writing your exam, I think this is a blessing in disguise.
What in terms of what you mean by a blessing in disguise there?
This writing your P1 exam in your home is something it's a blessing, right? The pressure of the exam hall itself, and looking at those 500 candidates and their nervousness on their faces, it's something, it takes a toll on your nerves, right? But when you are doing it in front of a computer and there's just the camera is on, so it's pretty easy to calm yourself down, because P1 is all about timing. If you miss your mark, then even if you know the answers, you won't be able to make it in time. So it's all about timing and not getting stuck on one question. But yeah, the pressure of that exam hall is something, I always felt that it was very overwhelming for me. I don't know about I can't comment about someone else, but yeah, it was very overwhelming for me. um yeah.
All right, so let's continue on with the P1 exam. I know certainly it's different to now, as you pointed out, it's online, it's half the time, but I mean, you still have the same amount of time per question. I believe it's roughly about 90 seconds a question, as it was then and as it is now. So I do see right away a question from one of the students who's going to be writing their exam next month. In terms of organizing the material and finding your answers in the materials very efficiently, how did you prepare? I mean, maybe we can get into more of that in terms of your preparation and what you share with the people that you've been helping with in terms of getting them to pass the exam as well.
Yes, so tabbing is something which is very important once you're ready to write the exam. I always advise my students or people who I help to write the exam is that they go through the material at least twice before they start tabbing it, because once they go through the material twice, they would have a mapping in their mind that where would they find the relevant answers. Because in the exam there will be very less questions. I believe maybe 10% of the questions would be where you will find an exact word to word answer, accurate answer for the question which they are asking in the materials. Basically material is a very condensed and compact source resource. So if you know the idea, if you read the question correctly, then you will know that which section you need to go to. So once you get to read the material twice, then you can start tabbing. And then tabbing with indexing, I would so basically there is an index which comes with the material, but it is a very I would say vague index, because it will just tell you jurisdiction and fundamentals and then give you some headers, headings into that. But I indexed it more deeply, like if there is anything, if it's regarding administrative tribunals in the administrative law. So I would go for, like, if it's like the IRB. If it's about the IRB, I would tab it more into further classifications. Or if it's for any other tribunal, LTB or anything, I would further classify, what are the remedies and what you can expect at the LTB. So some of my students gave me this feedback after they write the exam, that they didn't even get the time to look at the materials, like for most of the questions, I would say. But to be very honest, I did have time. I finished my exam 15 minutes prior to the end time, and I had ample of time in looking at these study material. In fact, I could strongly say, confidently say, that I looked for the answer for every question in the material, and I found it. So basically, it's just a technique. Everyone has their own ways, and there's no fixed way of doing it. But I would say that, if you can do some mock exams before the real exam with your materials tabbed already, I think that would be really, really, really something an aspiring exam writer should look into.
And you know any of these resources that you may have made reference to before, in terms of what are some things that helped you in terms of preparing and making an index and doing some questions and things like that?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
I mean, where did you have some resources? Do you have anything, sort of tips, resources to access for people looking for things to prepare for the exam?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't know, but there are no resources for paralegal P1 exams, which I could access at that time 2 years ago. I looked at Emon website. They have an index for lawyers for the L1 exam. I recently have not looked into the website, but I can suggest that if they can go to Emon Publishing, they provide the exam questions and the whole bundle. Maybe now they have the index there, but for the P1 exam. But at that moment, I looked into it, and it was L1. So basically, it was all, self constructed, self made. I had to go through each and every line, and then take out the summary of that, and then make an index. So that was time consuming, but as I said, I read the material twice before even I started indexing and tabbing. So you can imagine, there would be some mapping already in my mind. So it took less time. So like I just saw Roxana letting us know in the chat that she would be writing the exam in July. So it's already June. So if she has already read the material twice, but she just mentioned that she got it a week ago, so it's not possible to read it twice in a week. But if she eventually does do that and speed up things, she would be able to make it two readings before she starts tabbing, and then I would say one skim through before she's ready for the mock exam. It's all about finding the questions answer in the material in that limited time of 90 seconds. That's the whole catch. If you practice on doing that, P1 is doable.
Yeah, and certainly I'm not sure about it today, but like you said, I know Emon's always had, or at least not always, but for a lengthy period of time, they've had their practice exams that certainly I would recommend for anyone writing. I think they're about $60, I believe, for one set, or I think you can get like a package of two. But
Correct.
maybe
That's
later
correct.
on today, I can tell you a bit more about that. And as well, I mean, for those listening who may be writing, and hopefully you're not listening to this after the weekend there, but certainly on Sunday morning, I'm planning on doing like a free kind of session similar to what we're talking about now for anyone else, to look at how to prepare. And I agree with you there, Mohammed. Certainly, it's about studying smart, not necessarily studying hard, because of the time, especially for those writing in July. Now, I'm not sure when you wrote, but it's a little bit more difficult because you get the materials in May, right, or late May, I believe. So you're up within 8 weeks, whereas someone writing in October or February has all that much more time to prepare. So I think there's a little bit of hesitancy sometimes about getting and writing it right away because you don't get that much preparation time. What was your experience like with receiving the materials, and then you're going and reading it a couple of times? Did you feel that you had more than enough time to prepare, or what would you suggest to someone that's planning on writing and the exam's about 6 weeks away?
Um, in my case, I wrote the exam in February, and I had time. I think I had a couple of months prior to my exam. I got the materials, but then again, you know what? I'm kind of that lazy person that I never started studying it 1 month before, and then in 1 month I had to really reach out to my mentors and ask them, what's gonna happen. I unfortunately I couldn't study. Since I got the materials, and now I just have 30, maybe I had 32, 33 days. So one of my mentor, he told me that, what, why don't you make a schedule now? Because you have to give at least 4 hours every day in reading these materials and, practicing. And, just not reading the material is not the whole point. I guess somewhere in those materials, there are some points where you would also want your to refer to your books which you got in school. So I had to go back and forth in those green books and come back, uh, and then trying to understand, then highlighting the points which I couldn't understand, and then getting the clarification from my mentors or my teachers or my peers. This is one more thing I wanted to highlight, that what, in materials, it's not that you will understand everything. There will be some places where you would need some guidance on, someone to reflect some light on that. So um, it is always necessary, and I feel very necessary that you study the materials with a peer, like not together, but you both start at the same time, and then if you have any questions, so you have someone to discuss before you escalate it to someone who really knows the answer. So if you could have that couple of minutes of discussion on that topic before you escalate it to someone who knows the answer, that really allows you to analyze. Because as you are anyone who's writing the P1 exam, they would understand when they do write it, that all of those questions require analysis. There is no straight answer to any of the questions, except very, very few where you will find, oh yeah, yeah, I know this is like, you know notwithstanding clauses, this, okay, that's fine. But in most of the questions, there would be a scenario, and you would have to read through the scenario and then analyze what would you do if you were a licensed paralegal. This is very important point. Most of the questions inside the P1 exam tests you, that if you were a licensed paralegal, what would you have done in that scenario. So yeah.
Right. And in terms of maybe dividing up, now I don't know for you personally, but in terms of maybe dividing up an index, right, especially if you are starting in July, maybe somebody focuses. I remember when I went and wrote the barrister and solicitors exams all those years ago, that was one of the things that we had, is someone was in charge of this unit, someone else was in charge of that. And then obviously, I mean, the caveat I will mention, and I would mention for anyone writing, is make sure you're working with people you can trust and that you have similar uh, notations, right? I mean, if you would categorize or index something in this way and someone does it completely different, there's going to be a problem there, right? So, I mean, did you have any experience kind of working with people in terms of preparation, as you were just talking about there, or was it just in kind of discussing things?
Yes, so it's great that you touched on this point, because I started doing the same which you just said. We divided the stuff. um, in Even in class, we used to divide stuff in our assignments, right? You do this portion, you do this portion. So the teamwork was already there. We had the understanding, but when it came to the P1, uh, it didn't work out, because again, someone's else understanding of the material, the notations, how to categorize that paragraph into what short form, is different than mine. So uh, in the P1, in writing the P1 exam, I would definitely not recommend anyone doing that with some of its peers, because um, after 1 week, we figured out that this is not going to work, and then we did our own thing. So we lost 1 week in figuring out that, what, this idea will not work in the P1 exam. So I am against that. But I don't know, if someone has a very well understanding of each other, and they are on the same lines all the time in the schools, they may try it. But it's better to do it yourself.
Right, certainly. And I think if you are going to share, it's also important that you've got the materials ahead of time so you can do practice runs, and maybe you need to revise it if anything as well
Correct.
there.
That's
Now, any
correct.
other tips there in terms of time management or just testing anxiety itself? Now, I know part of your anxiety you mentioned was being in this big room with lots of people, that it's a little bit different. I mean, it's a lot different actually, as you were saying, a blessing in disguise there. But I mean, now you also have some other things to worry about, your internet connection, distractions in the house, if the cameras are working, right? So what are the ways that you can get better uh, prepared for testing day and overcoming? I mean, I think if any test you have that anxiety. I remember even writing the LSAT, people walking out of the exam partway through just because they were just overwhelmed. What do you think has worked for you, and that maybe can work for others as well?
Yeah. So the thing which I tried was that I stopped studying 2 days before. I never opened the materials, before the exam. Like 2 days, 48 hours to my exam, I closed the materials. They were tabbed, they were indexed. I was ready. I did my mock exams. I did a couple of them, 240 questions. Everything is inside my mind, and I kept my book, my materials in one side. And then the last 48 hours, it was just me talking to myself, calming me down, knowing that I will ace it. Because, self belief is very, very important. I have seen my students or my colleagues, my peers, who were really good at it, right? And they were like top flyers in the school, and I had the confidence in them that they would pass, they would ace this exam in the first attempt. But because of this anxiety and the overwhelming pressure of the exam, they couldn't make it in the first attempt. Some of them couldn't make it in the second even. So I strongly believe that a good night's sleep before the exam. uh, Keep your material aside at least, if not 48, at least 24 hours before the exam. You you shouldn't be reading those materials, because you will only get confused. One another tip I want to give you is that, once now, this tip is not applicable because you're not going into the exam room, but it was back then when I went to the exam room. There were all of my colleagues and peers who were writing the exam, and we all convened before the exam, because you have some time once you get signed in and checked in, and then you have some time to you can gossip. So and even in the break, there's a 1 hour break for lunch, and then you can also discuss, because it was in parts. So uh, not never discuss your concepts or your questions at the last moment, because it will only confuse you. So I just said, bro, to my friends, that what, I am done. I don't know anything about P1 at this moment. So you know what, let's write our exams in our own merry way, and then we will discuss it after pens down. So this is something very important. Nowadays it is not applicable, because you will be writing in your closed room, and no distractions. But yeah, good night's sleep, eat healthy before the exam. At least 1 week you should be good on your tight on your routine, sleep well, have good night's sleep, and then keep away your books at least 24 hours before your exam. No studying, because that will only confuse you, and that will only bring more anxiety into you.
Now, I wanted to maybe go a step back, and maybe we can probably talk if there's more questions from the students later. But maybe let's go back, and I see a question here from Marcella about comparative with exams you would have had during the program. So let's talk a bit. I mean, I know we've changed it as well. But in terms of maybe some of those strategies that can certainly apply there as well, how did you find? Now I know you probably had some exams with short answers at some point, but I think a majority were switching over to multiple choice. How did you find kind of comparing the exams you had? I mean, you had 4 hour exams at Trios there, and now you had this 7.5 hour exam. But how did you find making that transition there from preparing for a couple of exams in a week and every month a different set of pair and then assignments each time to now just focusing on this one exam that no, which is kind of for all the marbles, right? To get your license.
Yes. So uh, I can't compare the trials exam to the actual P1. It's very difficult. I'm not talking about the content. I'm talking about the structure, and I'm talking about the pressure. The pressure at trials was okay. It was just an exam. The pressure in the P1 exam is not okay. It's like the real exam. And the content at trials, the questions were like beautifully structured. What I learned and what I took from trials was the timing, because again, I had to answer so many questions in a limited time. So I mastered the skill of answering the question and finding it from the book, because it was open book exams. So that skill I mastered at trials. The content is, it's like, uh, you can't compare it, because most of the questions in the P1 are like analysis based and they're scenario based. At trials there were some simple questions also, for everyone's understanding, and to get the idea going. The another thing which is different between trials and P1 is that at trials, after 2 weeks, we were writing an exam for a set number of chapters, maybe from chapter 11 to 20, 20 to 28. But in the P1 exam, suddenly you're talking about the administrative tribunal. The next moment you're looking at a summary conviction. The next moment you're looking at something else. So it's like everything together, right? So it's very hard to remember everything. So that is why I never tried to memorize anything while I was preparing for the P1 exam, because I knew I would fail, and I would fail terribly. So what I did was that I uh, read through the material. I knew exactly at which page I will find which concept, and that was enough for me, because once I read the question, I knew immediately that which section I have to go and cross check. The answer would come to you. It would be at the back of your head, because you would have studied the materials. You would have studied 2 year program, 1 year accelerated at trials, or 4 year at Humber, I don't know. But the concept is already there. You can't change that. If not, then you would have already looked up to your professors, or the mentors to correct those concepts. But the whole idea is that you have to understand the question. Initially, in the first 15 questions, I use the strategy, to take it one by one, and give maybe couple of minutes, 2.5 3 minutes maybe to a question. And then I try to gauge, if I'm on the right track. There used to be a big clock in front of you, and you would know, the time is now, it's getting away from me. In the middle of the exam, there was one point where I was going behind, and there I accelerated, and I said, all right, I'll leave these questions till the last, and I'll jump onto the next one. That also helped me. So I would say, many of the students, you would see, they would attend seminars, webinars, and they would go look up to people who have written the exam, and they would ask, what was your exam strategy? Did you like timed it every question 90 seconds, yes, no, and then move on? Or did you look, you flipped strategies? I am kind of a person where I use several strategies in the exam, because when I was going too fast, then I slowed myself down, and when I was too slow, I picked up the speed. So during the exam, this is very important, if you can shift gears, because if you take one strategy for the whole exam, that is something I would not recommend. That could be risky.
Okay. And maybe just maybe in terms of looking back at the program there, see more people that are obviously current students that are, I mean, they're thinking about this. It's still probably a year or so away. But in terms of, I mean, a common question that I do get is about preparing for things like mock hearings, group trials and things like that mock trials. Now, what did you find in your experience that kind of helped you, especially when you're a lot of people are, so used to being able to do things on their own, wanting to do all their work on their own, and now being thrown into a group to prepare for a mock hearing or a mock trial. I mean, I have advocacy coming tonight. You may remember that one of the last courses there of getting your final mock trial done. But any advice for those students?
Uh, like any other industry, like any other occupation, legal fraternity also works in teams, right? Even when you are in front of a justice of peace, in a provincial offenses court, and with a prosecutor on the other hand, you're a team, right? You have to negotiate. Negotiation skills are very important. If you can negotiate an offense with a prosecutor, then you know you're not at the right place. So teamwork is very important. The mock trials at trials, they kind of naturally, also I wouldn't say that they didn't help, but naturally also a real trial is something different. A mock trial, if I'm working with you in front of you, I know you, like we're kind of friends, right? So there is no pressure on me, but at the same time, if I'm in front of a justice of peace or a justice, it's different. And then the prosecutor, so in the mock trial, probably the other party or the prosecutor is someone who I know for the last 1 year, and we have been friends and we have been going out, so there's no pressure on me. So I would say mock trials does help you to know the procedure of the courtroom, how things roll. But the real trial is something which you will experience when you're actually inside a courtroom, standing in front of a justice of peace or a judge, and bringing up your A game with your advocacy skills. But yes, it kind of helped you to know what the procedure would be, how the arrangement is done, and how you go about the procedures and steps and trials.
Okay, so then a good follow up to that is, as you mentioned, what then happens? Certainly we spend quite a bit, obviously, covering so many different things in a short period of time. I mean, given it's an accelerated program, but what did you find the biggest challenge now of taking that, going and passing the P1, and then starting your own practice, and then you're now really, I mean, obviously you had an internship as well too, but then you are before a justice of the peace, then you are before a judge, and now that sort of mock trial where you didn't feel any pressure, it's completely different. You have a real client with a real case. How did you kind of make that transition? And what advice do you have for any students in terms of starting your own practice right out of becoming licensed?
Yes, so the biggest advice would be that please take those mock trials very seriously, because if you don't, then you wouldn't be at 50% of where the real trial is. So take those mock trials seriously, and don't when we work in groups, we try to say, okay, you know what, you can do the cross examinations, and I'll just sit back and I'll give you some I'll pepper you with some ideas. So this is not the way to go. You have to bring up that confidence in you yourself, that what, I'll step up and I'll take the podium and I'll ask questions. Because if you don't do it here, then trust me, in the real trial, it's very hard. It's really, really very hard. I just finished a CPD program with Mr. Frank Alfano, and there we did many mock trials, during our CPD, and it was fascinating for me to work with so many other working professionals, like really, really, really good paralegals. They are really good at what they do, and it was very different to what I used to do at trials, because At that moment I didn't kind of take those mock trials very seriously, and on a very lighter note, and so, that's okay, I'll just give my best, and then rest is okay. But then with the passage of time, I sharpened my skills, and it is very important that a student takes those seriously, and then the switch is something everyone needs to go through. It's not like that, if I tell you something and you will not go through that once you are there at your first trial. No, it is a passage which everyone needs to go through, and that is your win, right? That is the pleasure of getting through that time, that your first trial when you're standing in front of the justice. On a lighter note, I couldn't address the justice of peace. I was addressing justice of peace as madam, and then just rang a bell. You know what? That I'm standing in front of a justice of peace, and I corrected myself. I said, "Sorry, just." Um, so, so the thing is that sometimes you get so much nervous in front of justice of peace that you forget how to address. And so yeah, the experiences were great. After my first trial, I had my second one, I was more confident. The third one, I was more confident. Fourth one, I had the charges withdrawn. So you know what, it's just step by step. And I would definitely recommend that everyone take those mock trials very seriously. Especially, I really like the idea what you people were doing in the Dominion mock trial thing. Um, um, that was something really, 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 up to the standard. And the people who have participated in those trials, I think they're at a good standard, and they are very near to the actual setting of the trial.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that, looking back for people who've come 2 3 years ago, and like yourself, that we weren't really competing in. And I mean, there wasn't a Dominion mock trial. I know I'm on the board of directors, and it's been just our first year now, but there were other competitions. I know some of my students are doing the Lions Cup moot later this month. Dominion's going to have another moot for paralegal colleges and undergraduate students in August. And certainly there's the Osgood Cup. There's a lot of other ones that are there, but we were just not. I mean, I know personally, I was just not aware of them, um, or that they were open to paralegals colleges. I mean, I thought they were more undergrad things, but I think that certainly I would echo that for anyone listening is get involved in those as soon as you can, and get them the more practice, right? The more, and I think it's a little bit different given what Mohammed's saying, right? I mean, the stakes there are you're competing just to impress whoever's there, and maybe you don't feel the same, I guess, confidence when you're doing something in class where you're used to, you're more relaxed about it. So definitely would encourage that. Now, is there anything else there in terms of the program, or in terms of being a student, for those students that are here, that you found beyond just obviously coming to class and doing the assignments and preparing for the exams, that really work for you in terms of achieving what you've achieved?
I think it's just not about going to the school and attending those 4-hour classes. It's about interacting with your instructors, asking them that what inspired them, and then discussing matters with them. What I used to discuss matters with my instructors. I used to ask them. I used to because the classes are not like really 4 hours, right? You just study for 2.5 3 hours, and then you have some time to work for your assignments, or do something else. I use that time in a different way, rather than spending my time on typing the assignments. I would do that at the home, and then interact with the professors, ask them what's going on. And then because when you ask someone a questions which interests him or her, then he's more likely to get started on that conversation. So if one of my professors, you would be working on an LTB case, she would discuss. She would say she obviously not discuss the confidential part of that matter, but still, give me an idea of what's going on, what's it all about. And like I remember I came to you a couple of times, just to ask what's going on, and you told me that you're working on um, a matter, a criminal matter for someone, and then that's about it. And then one more thing, which is very important and which is very useful, is that you volunteer your time with licensees, because internship is 120 hours. You go there, you work, you learn, you do not learn, you'll get those hours and you're out of there. And then your mind is now working towards the P1 exam. But once you start the program, or maybe midway through, if you're not feeling that confident, I would strongly suggest that you go and volunteer your time with any firm. You do not need any references. You do not need your placement manager, whoever it is. I don't know what it is called, but to for them to get you in, you walk into a law office, like not nowadays, like it's COVID, but back then you just walk into a law office and you just tell them, I'm here to volunteer, put me on the photocopier, or you know what, I'll fax papers for you, or I'll just go to the court and file these documents for you, but please get me in. That will help you, because that helped me a lot, a lot, a lot. I already knew. So my placement was in a personal injury firm, right? And I had already volunteered, I don't know, hundreds of hours in a personal injury firm. So when my placement was there, the first thing, my principal, the lady, she was a paralegal. I went to a law firm, and she was a paralegal of accident benefits, and she looked in my resume, was, oh, you have volunteered in a personal injury law firm. So tell me, what do you know about accident benefits, and what are productions, and what is OCF, and what is what not. And when I started giving her answers, she said, well, like, you're ready for a job in this law firm. You're, you know what, you don't need to be a placement student. You're actually ready for a job. So my time flew very brilliantly at that place. And then, still nowadays I'm working with that law firm. Um, so yeah, it helps you a lot. I would strongly recommend everyone to volunteer their time, please, if you want to succeed in this fraternity.
Now, you mentioned there, certainly you can, before you could just walk in and try to make some connections that way. What can you do now in terms of networking and connections that you can share with students?
Uh, I guess the best platform is Justice in Pieces, right? Yeah, this is what it is, right? I've been doing these 1 hour webinars with some other organizations, non-profit organizations such as Achieve and United for Way. um, it's basically about networking and knowing people. I don't know about other paralegals or immigration consultants, but there are some paralegals and immigration consultants who do offer virtual volunteer opportunities. There is a big aspect of confidentiality involved in that, because I can't just give anyone the access to a current matter, virtually, right? So there are some things involved, but still, I don't know, but things may work out. I just recently started to give an opportunity to a student for my immigration practice, and she's been volunteering with me. And I think things are going to get better very soon. I guess we are moving into step one on June 14th, and I think things will get better. I don't mind anyone coming to my office. I'm an essential service, so I don't mind a student coming to my office and volunteering some time. Um, I have an open door policy always, and if I do have any space, I will definitely oblige it, because this is something very important. I realized while I was in those shoes, I realized other people gave me this opportunity. So now when I am in a position where I can give anyone else an opportunity, I would definitely love to do that.
Now, you just touched on your immigration practice there. Now, I know it's a little different with the rules now in terms of studying for the ICCRC and getting accredited there. But any advice? Because I mean, I know there'll still be students. I don't know ultimately if it being a 2-year program, and I know there's all this uh, issues around the Law Society and the ICCRC and whether or not that's needed for paralegals. But what are your thoughts there in terms of making that decision to continue on with school to get an immigration practice? And I know as well you do some real estate stuff. So how do you kind of advise people who are looking to have their own practice of maybe diversifying and having other revenue streams as well?
So immigration, you know what? My specialization is refugee law because I have been a refugee and I've been through that procedure. So my specialization is refugee law. To start a refugee claim, you need to be an RCIC. But to represent a refugee at an IRB hearing, you do not need the license of ICCRC. As a paralegal, you can represent. So it was kind of, I had half of the powers, but I didn't have the other powers. So it was not aligned. I was not aligned to serve my clients appropriately. That was the only reason I wrote the exam and went to school, special 8 months course for that, which is now 2 years at Queens. So if you're really looking at into refugee law, and then yes, you may go for the RCIC exam. But uh, if you have more interest in applications, the Federal Express Entry and the all the other classes, then again ICRC is something you should look into. But knock on wood, there are some lawsuits currently. And who knows, maybe it becomes your scope of practice very in the very near future. So I don't know, but yes, I can't comment on that.
Perfect. So Mohammed, just seeing if there's any other questions. Someone's asking about in terms of an exam. Now I know there are options through, if you failed, you can go and request from the Law Society a private tutor. And I know we've talked about different organizations. I've shared a couple there that have courses, and I know even both of us have kind of done stuff for students there as well. But do you need kind of like a one-on-one tutor, or did you think that's something excessive, or is it worth? I mean, I guess obviously the answer depends on who it is, but did you find that that's something that you or any of your classmates used when you were writing the exams?
I think it's a mix of both, right? You can't just say that one thing will be better than the other thing. Sometimes everyone comes to that point where they would need a little bit of one-on-one, right? But I've always been comfortable in a group session, because uh, as many people are there, as many brains, they're really good because ideas flow through each other. And then there are certain concepts which is very clear to someone but very vague to someone else, right? There are certain concepts. So in regards to that, I would say it's a mix of both. And I have done one-on-one sessions for the P1 also. There was this one student, and she said, you know what, I can't study in a group. So I said, okay, if you're fine with the going on one, then that's absolutely fine with me. But then again, like you said, I totally agree. It depends on who the other person is, because it gets really tricky if what you are trying to explain and the other person is not getting the point. And if especially if it's a one-on-one, then it just drags the conversation, and then it sometimes it goes in different directions.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Mohammed, for taking the time here and joining us this evening and sharing your experiences there in getting a practice set up, as well as obviously on writing the P1 exam and just making that transition from being a student to being a practitioner. So I was wondering to maybe if you could end with some final words of wisdom for students who are looking to make that same leap that you did. And as you said, it's a lot different when it's real than when you were a student. So what can you advise people in terms of setting up practice and making that transition? Any words of wisdom you can add? And thanks again for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. The thing which I want to convey to my aspiring paralegals and future colleagues is that do not hesitate in starting your own practice. This was something which I was, very afraid of. I was good in my advocacy skills. I'm a good speaker. I can speak in front of the public. But then there was this hesitation which was inside me, and which was, I was reluctant to start my own practice. But then I spoke to someone, and then, she said, go for it. The sooner you get into it, the better you will be in the upcoming time. So one more thing which I have learned in my experience of maybe 2 years into practice or maybe less is that to become a competent paralegal, you need at least 2 years of practice, actual practice. Everyone is same when they pass the P1 exam. You're not, the best paralegal on planet Earth. You learn from your mistakes. You will do mistakes. There is no question. I will tell you right now, there is no question that you will not make mistakes on your first trial. But that should not be, something stopping you in starting your own practice. Once you get into that position and you go through that stage yourself and with the help of your mentors like JP and your peers, then you become a paralegal. So writing your exam is one thing, starting your practice is one thing, and getting through those starting nervous moments is your final destination, the goal. Thank you very much.
Perfect. So thanks again, Mohammed, for everything. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. And we'll see you back actually, because tomorrow is a day off here. For the students, we'll see you back on Monday at 5 o'clock. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Mohammed. Have a great day.
Thank you, Roxana.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
Mohammed. That was fantastic.
Thank you, Marcella. Thank you. Have a good
Have a
one.
good night.